Why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? While most Americans know about the Day of Infamy, many are unaware of the events that led up to it. Japan was trying to set up an empire throughout Asia, but its violence pushed America to intervene, forcing the empire to take action against us. Number 1, Japan had begun to create a massive empire that spread across Southeast Asia, putting it into competition with America. Number 2, as the Japanese empire grew increasingly brutal and cruel, America distanced itself from it. Number 3, Japan believed that they needed to push the United States Navy out of the Pacific. In the late 19th century, Japan became obsessed with redefining itself as a great power, just as America was doing the same thing. This quest put our two nations on a collision course. There were practical reasons for this. They had strategic interest in Korea, China, Taiwan, Manchuria, Shandong, the entire Chinese coast, the Philippines, and the Dutch East Indies, because that would give them access to raw materials they needed. They also wanted to return to tradition, which was loving the emperor and national loyalty. The emperor died in 1912. Many felt a sense of loss. People lined up to pay their respects outside of the imperial palace in Tokyo. General Nogi killed himself and his wife. End quote. The revered military hero's wife joined in his act of Zhengshi. End quote. Dr. Doris Bardon. Zhengshi was like a way to honor those you respected by killing yourself when they died. People wanted to go back to their traditions. As the Japanese empire grew increasingly brutal and cruel, America distanced itself from it. Japan had an empire from Alaska to Singapore. The American-Japanese relations were going good until World War II. In September 1940, Japan invaded French Indochina, where China was getting arms and fuel. America enacted tariffs against Japan and called a moral embargo. They banned U.S. shipments of airplane parts and fuel. One example of Japan's cruelty is the Nanking Massacre. It lasted over 6 weeks in late 1937 in Nanking, China. They were very, very cruel, and policemen and firemen were specifically targeted. They plundered the entire city. Tilman Durden says, quote, "The killing of civilians was widespread," end quote. Point 3. Japan believed that they needed to force the United States Navy out of the Pacific. Japan's increasing conflict with America pushed it into alliance with the Axis powers, which they joined on September 27th in 1940. In 1941, America barred shipments of oil to Japan, which they would need if they were to have a navy and air force. So, Japan invaded Indochina. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The Oklahoma and West Virginia, which were both boats, took the worst of the attack, or of the first wave of the main attack. It was supposed to take 90 seconds to hit those two ships, but it took over 11 minutes. The Oklahoma capsized after 15 minutes of being hit by 5 torpedoes. The USS Arizona took 2 hits, split in half, exploded, and sunk. This killed 1,177 sailors, which was more than half of the people killed that day, which was 2,335. The second wave was poorly done and did not sink as many boats as Japan wanted. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said in his speech to the Senate and Congress, quote, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, end quote. While most Americans know about the Day of Infamy, many are unaware of the events that led up to it. Japan was trying to set up an empire throughout Southeast Asia, but its violence pushed America to intervene, forcing the empire to take action against us. Number 1, Japan had begun to create a massive empire that spread across Southeast Asia, putting it into competition with America. Number 2, as the Japanese Empire grew increasingly brutal and cruel, America distanced itself from it. Number 3, Japan believed that they needed to push the U.S. States Navy out of the Pacific Ocean. Quote, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.